Cool. Okay, so tonight's talk is going to be quite informal, but hopefully very informative for you all. We're going to cover 3 key points, and then hopefully by the time we get to the 4th point, you should all be able to answer this with us and have your own ideas to take away from this session. We're going to try and make this session as interactive as possible, so please feel free to contribute and share your ideas and things when we ask you to. But before we start, can I get you all to mute your microphones so that you can concentrate on what myself and Natasha are saying, and then when we get to the question bits, you can unmute them. Okay? Is everyone all right with that? Yeah? Cool. Awesome. So whilst we're away from the pool, this is the perfect opportunity for us all to learn from each other. And today I want to introduce you to Natasha. She's a physiotherapist who's worked in the community with children in London and has a great understanding of how injuries happen and what we can do to minimise the chances of getting injured. You'll have all had the link to her YouTube channel as well for the mobility and meditation sessions. Natasha has a passion for helping people move better and live better, which is why I've invited her here to talk with us all today about moving efficiently to help minimise our risk of injury. I also wanted to give you someone else to listen to because I'm quite sure you're pretty bored of hearing my voice by now. So hopefully together me and Natasha will give you a different perspective on why we need to move well.
Hi everyone, I'll just say hi now and thank you for having me, and we both hope that you find this useful and interesting, and we've kept it quite short and sweet, and there will be opportunities answering any questions if you have any. But firstly, I thought I would just tell you how Carla and I met, because I'm down in London, she's obviously up in the Midlands. So we met in September at the World Paris Swimming Championships, where we were both part of the medical team. So we worked there together for the week, and then we've kept in touch ever since. And hopefully we'll do a few other collaborative things in the next few weeks to make ourselves useful.
Yes, hopefully. So our conversation tonight is going to cover 3 main points. The first one is going to be what is range of movement. The second one is going to be what gives us the ability to move. And then the third one is going to be why do we need control over our body when we move. And then we're going to finish off with our own creative recipes for moving efficiently. So you guys as swimmers will probably have heard coaches talking about the importance of fully extending through strokes, maintaining rotation whilst you're swimming, and then the importance of maintaining your range of movement when you're doing land work. But do any of you actually know what range of movement is? So let's just have a quick thumbs up on the screen if you think you know what range of movement is. It's totally fine if you don't, but let's see if we can have a quick scroll through and see if anybody knows what it is or not, as the case may be. Cool. Got a few halves in there, that's cool. Cool. So, all right then. So my first question for you, Natasha, is what is range of movement? And let's see how your answer compares to what the swimmers think they already know.
Okay, cool, perfect. So I would say that range of movement is a fundamental skill that we all need to perform any movement fully without any stiffness or pain. And that's because stiffness or pain can cause your movements to be limited. And if your movements are limited, then over time it may increase your injury risk when you're playing your sports or you're doing your normal day-to-day activities. Also, joints are at their healthiest when they're moved regularly and through their full range of movement. So we need full range of movement to reduce our injury risk, but also to keep our joints healthy. So if we take the shoulder joint as an example and imagine you're doing your backstroke movement, if your shoulder movement is limited to here, then you're going to lose power in your backstroke. And there'll be a difference in power produced per stroke between swimmers with full shoulder flexion compared to those who have got limited flexion at that movement. So Carla, have you got an example for this that everyone can do in the pool?
So if we stick with the backstroke as an example, we need to be able to move our shoulder into full flexion with rotation in order to create the deep catch and then accelerate through the water. So obviously this isn't all done with just your shoulders, but next time you guys can get in the pool, if you've got your own, you can try this out maybe tomorrow, or next time you guys are actually back in the water, you can try this out yourself. If you try and do the stroke, a backstroke stroke, lying flat in the water with your arm entering at sort of 45 degrees, stay as flat as possible and try and pull through the water, you will see what that does to your stroke. And then if you try and do the same thing, but rotating through and having your hand enter with your arm by your ear, you'll see how much of a difference that makes to your stroke. Yeah?
Yeah, that sounds like a good practical. Like Carla just said, it's important to make sure that you've got great mobility in all of your joints, so from head to toe, so not just in your shoulders, so that the joints and muscles with great mobility don't have to work harder for the areas where you might have limited range of movement. And again, that's because over time, that may increase your injury risk. So when you do your pre-pool or your gym sessions, just make sure that you're training all of the joints in your body, because if you're limited at one end of the body, then that will affect the movement and the efficiency of your movement at the other end.
Okay, does this make sense to everybody? And if you've got any questions about that, now's the time to ask us. If everybody's happy, we can move on to the next bit. Anybody? No?
Cool. Can I ask one?
Yeah.
Can you go like into a movement that's past, you know, you said like you should be using your full range of mobility. Can you ever like do a stroke and go past that and actually end up doing damage? Or maybe like over, like for a backstroke for a session, put your arm in like over here instead of in line. Did that even make sense?
Yeah.
Do you want me to
go.
go and then you can?
Yeah.
So in terms of, everyone will have a range of movement, but some people will be more flexible than other people. So some people have got what we would term hypermobility, which just means where I can maybe only go to here with my elbow, which is a straight line, some people have the ability to go, I can't do it, but they can go further. That's completely normal for that person. And the thing that you have to think about then is, and this is a different topic, but you have to make sure you've got control over the range of movement that you've got.
Okay.
And that also that you're strong within those ranges. So when you can get to your end range, rather than just being strong in say that range, you want to make sure you're strong in your end of range as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. Go on, Jamie.
Hi, Natasha.
Hey.
So it's a good question from George, because a lot of these kids will be like hypermobile.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite common in swimming, and we're quite obsessed with sort of being strong, very close to our body, but these guys, it's so important to be stronger, quite a way away from the center of their bodies. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose the further away you are from your body, it's an increase in force and an increase in load. So then when you come to do all your swimming specific training, you would train with controlled loads that you know that you can progressively increase to match the sport demand. So when you're in the water, so again, you're just being as efficient as you can and reducing your injury risk. But it's an advantage as well. There are, like you say, swimming's one, gymnastics is another. It's actually an advantage to be hypermobile. So it's just working with that range and making sure you're strong throughout it rather than just part range.
Yeah, it's knowing your own individual range that's important, so that you can then train within that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more? No? Okay. So swimmers, maybe you can think of an answer for this as well. Natasha, can you tell us what gives us the ability to move?
Yeah, well, there are lots of different things, so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here, but I would say firstly, movement requires motivation. So motivation is an unconscious process that will happen in the brain, and at a very fast speed, the brain will send an electrical signal down the spine, so down the back, and then that signal will exit out of the spine into the relevant nerves, which will supply the muscles that we want to move. But that happens so quick you won't know about it until you move. So the actual movement is produced by the muscles, and the muscles are supported by our tendons and ligaments and joints. And those are probably some terms you've heard of before. So our muscles contract to produce movement. So as an example, if you do that, then your biceps are going to contract. But at the very same time, the triceps, so the opposite group of muscles, have to lengthen. So you get a contraction of one set of muscles, and you get a lengthening and a relaxing of the opposite set. And that's just an example of how we move.
And then, so our ability to move can be developed and improved, just like anything. It's a learned skill. So with the correct technique and encouragement, we can make this one of our strongest abilities, which will lead to better performances in whatever sport we're choosing to do. So it's something that you can really work on and improve.
Yeah, definitely. So we have to want to move, and then we need the ability to move, which requires an equal measure of strength, flexibility, and of course, repetition and practice. And Carla's going to tell us the other thing that we need to move.
So another thing that we need to move is support to create a stable base, which allows us to move. So for example, if we stick with our backstroke again, we need a strong and stable core, which supports the smooth and efficient movements of our arms and legs, allowing us to produce power whilst we're swimming. And this link of movements of everything happening together has a very specific name. So Natasha, can you remind us what that name is?
Yeah, so the names for these links in the body, which connect the head to the feet and the feet to the head, they're called slings, so anatomy chains or anatomy slings. And again, in that backstroke example, one of the slings that connects the hip to the opposite shoulder is called the posterior oblique sling. Now, you don't need to remember the names, but remember that when you do your strokes, you'll be using muscles in your hip, which will produce force through your core and up to the opposite shoulder.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions about that at all? No? Cool, all makes sense.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can we just explain that, or maybe just do a bit more of a demo around what that might look like, just for the kids? Is that all right?
The chain, the sling?
Yeah.
Do you want me to, or do you want to?
You can if you like, I don't know. I can put it into swimming terms after.
No, do it in swimming terms, because that'll make more sense.
So in swimming, we think about obviously our left and right side for backstroke. And obviously like our right shoulder is pulling. So our right shoulder is entering the water. Our left hip is coming out of the water. So sometimes we think about lifting our hip and lifting our shoulder at the same time. But actually what is creating the movement is you pushing your right hip down into the water, which is making your left shoulder come out. So it's almost like a seesaw. So you have to try and think of things as opposite sides. It's never really the same side at the same time that's creating the movement. That makes sense better.
So they're working in tandem.
Yeah, so it's like it's like crossbody really. Yeah. So your hip links to your shoulder and then vice versa. So if you have limited mobility at your shoulder, it's going to affect the rotation you're able to get at your hips, which a lot of people don't really think about.
Okay, cool.
And there are other slings as well. It's not complicated, it's just like it's another topic all of its own, but there's a sling called the spiral line or the oblique line, and that goes from your ribs through your pelvis down to your feet and back up again. And one of the main purposes of that sling is to help drive that rotational force. So when we walk, when we swim, when we do day-to-day activities, we're always going to be using multiple slings, multiple muscles. Like we never really do anything in isolation unless we're specifically rehabbing something to get it back to the level that we need it to be, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
That's all right. Okay, so moving on then, Natasha, the third question. Can you tell us why we need control over our body when we move?
Yeah, so I think that without control over our movements, we would probably feel a little bit like jelly. So if you imagine what jelly looks and feels like, and imagine you're made out of jelly, do you think swimming a length would be easier or harder than it is for you now? So for me, I think it would be a lot harder. Carla, what about you?
Yeah, definitely harder, because I think you'd have to put a lot more effort into doing anything.
Exactly. But it's just quite a nice way to think about control. So we know that having great range of movement is important so we can perform our swimming and other sports at our best, but also having a great control over our movements is another fundamental skill, and it contributes to the efficiency of our movements, and by association will also decrease our risk of injury. So if you've got great movement and control, then you will have more opportunity to be efficient in all of your activities, because being efficient means that the task you're doing is easier, it takes less energy and effort, and you can perform that task quicker. And from what Carla's told me about pre-pool exercise is a really good opportunity for you guys to practice this skill. So when you do pre-pool, the coaches want to see slow, controlled movements, show them that you can use your full range of movement with control, and that you can focus your mind as well as your body. And if you don't have full range of movement, then the coaches can help identify what you need to work on and give you suggestions on how you can improve it. And this is part of learning also how you can do your own self-checks. So doing self-checks of your range of movement will help to guide you on what you need to focus on that day. And let's also not forget that pre-pool is a great opportunity to warm up your joints, muscles, and focus your mind on what you're going to do next.
So to put that into swimming terms for everybody, if you as athletes have efficient pre-pool, it'll mean that you are ready and primed to produce great and efficient technique in the water every single session. But this is only going to happen each time you produce an efficient pre-pool. If you're late or you just can't be bothered to engage in what you're supposed to be doing, then you aren't giving yourself the opportunity to perform at your best. So it's important that you are switched on and you know what you're doing. Yeah. So with that being said, does everybody understand the importance of control? Yeah. Any questions on that at all? We're going to be really quiet.
We'll take that as a good sign.
Put your hand up, guys, if you've got a question, or if you're not sure about something or you want something going over again. Mia.
When you're on about self-checks, how do you do that? How do you check your range of movement?
Yeah, for sure. So I think firstly, it's knowing why you're doing what you're doing. So in terms of your movement, I think Carla touched on this earlier, it's sort of getting to know your body well enough to know, actually, after the weekend, I feel a bit stiff in these movements or stiff in other movements, and I know that by practicing those movements, say on Monday morning, that's something I probably need to focus on, because sometimes when we're limited in time, we've got a certain period of time to do something, I find you can do a general warm-up, but then you might choose a few specific exercises to do just to make sure that you're really warming up into that movement. So self-checks, I would say, is actually about managing yourself and knowing your body, and then you can listen to your body and respond to it. I don't know if Carla's got any other ideas.
I think as swimmers, quite a common one that people will do, and it's not always necessarily done correctly, is most of you will be aware of a sleeper stretch and how to do that. And that's quite a good one for internal shoulder rotation, which we will use a lot in swimming. And swimmers tend to get quite tight because of the repetitive nature of the stroke. So it's good to do a check on that, but then it's also important to know why you're doing that. So what are you going to do with that information? So like Natasha said, yes, do that check, but how do you know where it fits for you? So you have to be able to do more with that result afterwards. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question, Slev?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anything else? No? Okay, so we've covered the 3 main points that we wanted to cover. So finally, Natasha, as a summary, can you give us your recipe for moving efficiently?
Yeah, so Carla and I have been thinking long and hard about the recipe. Hopefully it will be amusing, and you're all going to have different ideas about this. So again, this is one where there are no wrong or no right answers. It's just a matter of opinion. So my first thing going in the ingredients is a measure of motivation. So we know that we need motivation to move, And I also thought that having goals are quite a big part of what drives our motivation. So goal setting, which I know you all do, is really important to achieve your short-term, your medium and your long-term goals. I also think that self-driven motivation is a key part of being a successful athlete. So that's my number one. My number two is a spoon of strength. So we know that in order to perform at our best, we need to be strong, and it's important to strengthen all of the body with a variety of exercise, as well as with our sport-related strengthening work. Number three, I've got a fresh sprig of flexibility. So in order to move fully, we need to be flexible, and we need an equal measure of strength and flexibility. And lastly, I've got a cup of control. So as we've said, control of our body is really important because we want to produce smooth, coordinated movements, which is really important for our efficiency. Carla, what is your great recipe for movement?
So I've got a few things the same as yours, and then a couple of things that are different. So my recipe, I've got a pinch of purpose, because us as athletes all need that drive and a reason for doing something. So we need to have a purpose for everything. I've then got a tablespoon of control, so that we are fully aware of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Without control, we could be hiding our actual range of movement, and then we can become more prone to injury by expecting greater things of ourselves. And if we're hiding our range of movement, we could be unaware of any of our limitations, and again, that puts us at a predisposition to injury. So I've then got a sprinkle of flexibility, because as we've said, if you're not very flexible, then you're going to struggle to perform skills well and efficiently, and then you're not going to achieve the outcomes that you want. And then the final thing that I've got in my recipe is a teaspoon of knowledge, because we all know that knowledge is power, and it helps us understand why we're doing things, and it makes everything easier if we know why we're doing something. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. So our challenge to you all is to create and share your moving better recipe to help you perform better when you're doing your land training, gym sessions, and for also when you're back swimming.
Cool. So perhaps you guys as swimmers can come up with your own recipe with all the things that we've been talking about today. You might even think of different things than what myself and Natasha have said. And perhaps you could share them on social media and tag us all in them. You can post them to Natasha's Instagram or Facebook, and she's got a little link that you can screenshot or jot down. So you can share on her pages, tag us all in them, because I think it's really important that we try and educate each other as well, and sharing knowledge with your friends who might do different sports, and you might be able to tell them things that you've learned today that you can transfer to something else as well.
Can I throw in something there?
Yeah.
So like particularly the older ones, so they potentially interact with quite a lot of other sports if they're on DIS. Or George, I know you do netball, don't you? Yeah. But also the younger ones, you might have school sports teams or whatever. So I think it's important that if you do come up with some really good recipes, examples of good practice, that we can share that. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So we hope this Zoom call has been interesting and useful, and that you've got a better understanding of why movement's important, and how great movement with great control of those movements can help to reduce your risk of injury and to perform better. So I think that's it from us, unless there are any questions.
If there are any questions. If there aren't, if anybody's sort of too shy to answer them now by being put on the spot, if you send them in a message to Jamie, he can potentially let myself and Natasha know, and we can either do a little follow-up video that we can post online answering those questions, or we can send it so it can be sent out. Or likewise, if there's anything else you'd like us to cover, then potentially in the coming weeks, myself and Natasha can do a bit more collaboration and do some more videos and share them to answer the things that you want to talk about. Yeah. Is there any questions for anyone?
Has anyone got any questions or needs anything just going over again?
What's the Instagram?
Oh, you want a little
It's a social media thing, Instagram.
Can you see that okay?
Oh, the bottom one's chopped off. There you go. Oh, no, up a bit. Up.
We can put that in the groups.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Definitely put the links in. If anyone's a bit shy, you can ask a question privately. If you go on the chat, if you go down to 2, pick out Natasha, and then you can send her a little message in there if you wanted to.
No.
Cool. All right.
Well, we did say it was going to be brief, and I hope it's been useful to everybody. So I just want to say thank you, Natasha, for giving up your time and talking to us. And is there anything else you'd like to add before you go, or?
No, just thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And I hope it was useful.
No, thank you.
That was really good. Thank you, Natasha.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.